our shirt on Teespring.
White nationalism. Sounds harmless, right? The term might evoke images of a peaceful, idyllic community where everyone shares the same values and traditions. But don't be fooled by the seemingly benign name. White nationalism is far from harmless. It's a dangerous ideology that has caused immense suffering and division throughout history. Like a preference for mayonnaise, but for race, it's not. Imagine if someone insisted that mayonnaise was the only acceptable condiment and all others were inferior. Now, replace mayonnaise with race, and you get a glimpse of the twisted logic behind white nationalism. It's an exclusionary belief system that seeks to elevate one race above all others, often through violent and oppressive means. It's a hateful ideology that's been around longer than Crocs, and twice as ugly. From the Ku Klux Klan's terror campaigns in the Reconstruction-era South to the modern-day alt-right movements, white nationalism has left a trail of fear and hatred in its wake. These groups have always cloaked their bigotry in the guise of patriotism and cultural preservation, but their true aim is to sow discord and maintain racial hierarchies. At its core, white nationalism believes that white people are superior. This belief isn't just about pride in one's heritage, it's about asserting dominance over other races. White nationalists often use pseudo-scientific theories and distorted historical narratives to justify their claims of superiority. They argue that their culture, values, and way of life are under threat from multiculturalism and immigration. They think their culture is the best, like a bad Yelp review written by your racist uncle. Imagine someone who refuses to try new foods and insists that their grandmother's cooking is the pinnacle of culinary achievement. Now imagine that person writing scathing reviews of every restaurant that doesn't serve their favorite dishes. That's the mindset of a white nationalist, closed-minded, intolerant, and convinced of their own superiority. This belief often comes with a side of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and a general distaste for anyone not fitting their narrow worldview. White nationalists don't just target people of different races, they also harbour deep-seated prejudices against various religious and cultural groups. Their rhetoric is filled with conspiracy theories about Jewish control of the media, fears of a so-called Islamic invasion, and disdain for anyone who doesn't conform to their rigid standards. Historically, white nationalism has its roots in good old-fashioned racism and colonialism. The idea that one race is superior to others has been used to justify some of the darkest chapters in human history. European colonial powers exploited and oppressed indigenous populations around the world, all while claiming to bring civilization to the savages. This toxic blend of racism and imperialism laid the groundwork for modern white nationalist ideologies. Think European empires carving up the world like a Thanksgiving turkey, convinced of their own superiority. The colonial era was marked by a ruthless scramble for territory and resources, driven by a belief in the inherent superiority of the European race. Colonizers imposed their languages, religions, and social structures on the people they conquered, often with devastating consequences. This legacy of exploitation and domination continues to influence white nationalist thought today. Fast forward to today, and while we've swapped pith helmets for Make America Great Again hats, the sentiment remains the same. The slogans and symbols may have changed, but the underlying message is eerily similar. Modern white nationalists often cloak their rhetoric in the language of patriotism and national pride, but their goal is still to create a society where one race holds all the power and privilege. We were great, then they came along, and now we need to be great again. This nostalgic longing for a better past is a common theme in white nationalist propaganda. They paint a rosy picture of a time when their race supposedly reigned supreme, conveniently ignoring the injustices and inequalities that characterized those eras. By stoking fears of cultural and demographic change, they hope to rally support for their exclusionary and divisive agenda. Now, you might think, schools? Really? Isn't that where we send kids to learn, not to be indoctrinated into a life of prejudice? You'd think so, wouldn't you? Unfortunately, white nationalists see schools as fertile ground for their hateful ideology. They use sneaky tactics, like online forums and social media, to spread their message. They target young, impressionable minds, often struggling with identity and belonging. It's like offering a thirsty kid a glass of arsenic-laced Kool-Aid. They disguise their hate in pseudo-intellectual language, talking about preserving Western culture and defending white heritage. It's all very eloquent until you realize they're just repackaged Nazi talking points. One of the most baffling things about white nationalists is their fear of diversity. They see a world of different cultures and ethnicities, and their first thought is, we're under attack. It's like going to a buffet, seeing a plate of delicious food from around the world and freaking out because your mashed potatoes might touch the samosas. They call it white genocide, a term so ridiculous it should be filed alongside Bigfoot erotica in the annals of absurd conspiracy theories. The reality is diversity makes us stronger. It brings new ideas, perspectives and experiences. It's like adding spices to your food. It makes life more interesting and flavorful. Section 4, Building Walls, Not Bridges, the White Nationalist Utopia. Imagine a world where the walls are not just physical but ideological, a place where the concept of purity is taken to an extreme and order is maintained through conformity. This is the vision of a white nationalist utopia. So, what's the end game for these folks? What drives them to pursue such a divisive and exclusionary vision? What's their vision of a perfect world? They imagine a society that is homogeneous, where everyone looks the same, thinks the same, and acts the same. Well, buckle up, because it's about as appealing as a root canal performed by a drunk dentist. The idea of living in such a world is not just unappealing, it's downright terrifying. They dream of a white ethnostate, a place where only white people are welcome. This isn't just a casual preference, it's a fundamental part of their ideology. A place where diversity is seen as a threat, and inclusion is a dirty word. In their utopia, there is no room for anyone who doesn't fit their narrow definition of white, a place with no diversity, no dissent, and no room for individuality. It's a vision of a world where everyone is forced to conform to a single oppressive standard, and probably very bland food. Imagine a world where even the cuisine is stripped of its richness and variety, reduced to the most basic, uninspired fare. They imagine a world where white people rule supreme, where their authority is unquestioned and absolute. It's a vision of authoritarianism, where power is concentrated in the hands of a few, and everyone else is either subservient or, well, gone. It's a chilling vision, one that harkens back to the darkest chapters of human history, and one that should terrify anyone who values freedom, equality, and basic human decency. The idea of a white nationalist utopia is not just a threat to those who are excluded, it's a threat to the very principles that underpin a just and fair society. It's a world built on fear, hate, and exclusion. A world where the walls are not just physical barriers, but symbols of a deeper, more insidious form of division. It's a vision that we must all work to prevent by promoting understanding, acceptance, and unity. Section 5, White Nationalism, a Family Reunion of Hate. White nationalism isn't just one big happy family, it's more like a dysfunctional gathering of distant relatives who all hate each other but can agree on one thing: hating everyone else even more. You've got your neo-Nazis, who are often the most visible and vocal. They march in rallies, brandishing swastikas and shouting hate-filled slogans. They are the ones who openly embrace the most extreme forms of white supremacy, often advocating for violence and genocide. Then there are your Ku Klux Klan members, who have been around for over a century. They wear their infamous white robes and hoods, burning crosses and spreading terror. While their numbers have dwindled, their legacy of hate continues to inspire new generations of racists. And let's not forget the alt-right trolls, who use the internet as their battleground. They spread their toxic ideology through memes, social media posts, and online forums. They are masters of dog whistles, using coded language to spread their message without getting banned. But white nationalism isn't just about these overtly hateful groups. It's also about the everyday racists who might not wear a uniform or attend a rally, but who still hold deeply prejudiced beliefs. They might use more subtle signals, like certain hand gestures or phrases, to indicate their allegiance to the cause. These groups might have their differences, different outfits, different chants, different levels of tolerance for tiki torches, but they all share the same core belief: white supremacy. They believe that white people are superior to all other races and that they should have control over society. This belief manifests in different ways. Some might advocate for a white ethno-state where only white people are allowed to live. Others might push for policies that discriminate against people of color, like stricter immigration laws or voter suppression tactics. They're like different brands of the same poison. They might have different flavors, but they'll all kill you just the same. Whether it's the overt violence of neo-Nazis, the historical terror of the KKK, the online harassment of alt-right trolls, or the everyday racism of ordinary people, the end result is the same. A society where people of color are marginalized, oppressed, and dehumanized. This poison seeps into every aspect of life, from the criminal justice system to the education system, from housing policies to healthcare. It affects how people are treated by the police, how they are portrayed in the media, and how they are perceived by their neighbors. The warning labels are there, clear as day, but too often they are ignored or dismissed. People might think that because they don't see swastikas or burning crosses, white nationalism isn't a problem, but it's there, lurking beneath the surface, ready to poison the minds and hearts of those who are susceptible to its message. The antidote to this poison is unity and solidarity. It's about coming together as a diverse community and standing up against hate. It's about educating ourselves and others, challenging prejudiced beliefs, and advocating for policies that promote equality and justice for all. It's a long and difficult fight, but it's one that we must undertake if we want to build a society where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Because in the end, love and compassion are the strongest antidotes to hate.